The call came at 4:12 on a Tuesday afternoon in December, while I was sitting in the parking lot of a hardware store with a box of Christmas lights on the passenger seat. I did not raise my voice. I did not ask him to explain himself. I said, "I understand," twice, hung up, and sat there long enough that the windshield fogged over from my own breathing. Then I opened the banking app on my phone, found the recurring transfer of $3,950 that left my account on the 28th of every month, and I let my thumb hover over it for maybe 4 seconds. That was the whole deliberation. 4 seconds. I tapped cancel. The app asked if I was sure. I tapped yes. A little grey checkmark appeared, and the confirmation slid up the screen like a receipt for a sandwich. 9 days later, my phone lit up with 41 missed calls in a single morning, and I was standing on a frozen dock with a thermos of coffee, watching a heron decide whether I was worth the trouble of flying away from. I let it ring. If you have ever been the one who quietly paid for everything and then found out you were not welcome at the table you bought, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how many of us there are. My name is Raymond Coulter. Most people call me Ray. I am 68 years old, and for 41 of those years, I ran a structural engineering firm out of a converted brick warehouse on the east side of the city. We did bridges, parking decks, the kind of work nobody thinks about unless it fails. I was good at it because I have a very particular skill, which is that I can look at a beautiful finished thing and see the load path underneath it. I can see what is actually holding it up. That skill made me a decent living, and it also made me the loneliest man at every dinner party I ever attended. Because when you can see the load path, you can see it in people too. You see who is carrying and who is being carried, and you learn to keep your mouth shut about it because nobody wants a dinner guest who does that math out loud. My wife Eleanor died 6 years ago, in April. Pancreatic, fast, merciful in the way that a falling piano is merciful. We had one son, Nathan. Nathan is 34. He sells medical devices to hospital purchasing departments, and he is genuinely good at it, which surprised me because Nathan was never good at anything that required him to be alone in a room. He needs an audience the way other people need salt. Put him in front of a surgeon and a sales quota, and he lights up like a stadium. Put him in front of a spreadsheet, and he wanders off to find someone to talk to. He clears about $140,000 a year, which in this city is a good living for a man with no children and a paid-off car. 5 years ago, he married Kendra Whitaker. I want to be fair about Kendra, because bitterness makes a man unreliable, and I've spent my life being reliable. So here is the fairest thing I can say. Kendra was never cruel to me. Cruelty requires acknowledgement. Cruelty means you see a person and decide to hurt them. Kendra did something else. Kendra looked at me the way you look at a load-bearing wall in a house you have just bought. Not with dislike, with calculation. She was measuring how much weight I could take, and whether I could be moved later without the ceiling coming down. She called herself an interior designer. She had a website with a serif font and 11 photographs on it, 9 of which were of her own house. She had no clients that I could ever identify, but she had opinions about window treatments that she delivered with the confidence of a woman who had just been handed a MacArthur grant. The house was my idea. That is the part I have to own. Nobody twisted my arm. 4 years ago, after Eleanor died and I sold the firm, I had money and no earthly idea what to do with it. There is a specific kind of grief that money makes worse, because grief wants you to solve something, and money whispers that you can. Nathan and Kendra were renting a place with a bathroom fan that sounded like a small aircraft. She talked about the rental market the way a hostage talks about a basement. And one Sunday, I drove out to a development called Ridgeline, and I stood in front of a 4-bedroom with a stone chimney and a fenced yard, and I thought, Eleanor would have loved to see a grandchild run across that grass. That is not a financial reason. I know that. I have known it every day since. So I bought it, $610,000, with a mortgage in the name of Coulter Ridge Holdings, LLC, which is a small entity my attorney set up back when I was still buying commercial parcels and did not want my personal name on every county filing. I bought it, I furnished a good chunk of it, and I handed Nathan a set of keys in a coffee shop, and he cried, and I felt like a father for the first time since the funeral. He asked me a question that day that I have thought about roughly 10,000 times since. He asked, "So it's ours?" And I said, "You'll never have to worry about a roof again." Notice what I did there. He asked a question about ownership, and I answered a question about security. I did that on purpose. Not because I was scheming, because I was a man who had spent 41 years looking at load paths, and some hard little engineer in the back of my skull had already run the numbers on a marriage that was 11 months old, and that engineer said, "Keep the title." So I did. The deed stayed with the LLC. Nathan signed a 2-page occupancy agreement that my attorney Gwen Marsh drafted, which stated that he and Kendra were licensed occupants, responsible for utilities and maintenance, and that the license was revocable by the owner with 30 days written notice. He signed it in a coffee shop with a pen he borrowed from the barista. He did not read it. He read 3 words: occupancy, premises, and ridgeline. And then he asked me if the appliances came with it. I paid the mortgage, $3,950 a month, automatic, on the 28th. I paid the property taxes through escrow. I paid the homeowner's insurance. I paid the HOA dues, which were $420 a quarter, and covered nothing but the right to be told your mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Nathan paid the electric bill and the internet, and he told people at parties that he had bought a house at 29. I let him say it. That is the thing I need you to understand before you decide what kind of man I am. I sat at a dozen dinners and listened to my son tell the story of how he had bought that house, and I never once corrected him, because I wanted him to feel like a man, and I thought that if I gave him the feeling for long enough, the reality would eventually grow in underneath it, the way a vine grows into a trellis. That is not how it works. I know that now. When you hold something up long enough, it stops growing the parts that would have held it up itself. The uninviting happened on December 16th. I was in a hardware store parking lot because I had bought lights. Every year since Eleanor died, I had done the exterior lights at Ridgeline, and every year Kendra had rearranged them within 24 hours, and I'd let it go, because it was her house, or that is what we were all pretending. I had a box of warm white C9s and a new set of gutter clips, and I was thinking about whether I could get the peak done without asking Nathan to hold the ladder. The phone rang and it was him, and I knew before he said a word. You can hear it in the first breath. Nathan has a specific inhale he does when he is about to deliver something he has been handed by somebody else. It is a little rehearsed intake, like a man about to read a statement to reporters. Hey, Pop, he said. So Christmas, there's a bit of a situation. I said, okay. Kendra's parents are coming in, Dale and Marcy. They're flying up from Sarasota. It's kind of a last-minute thing. I said, that's good. I've never met them properly. There was a pause, and in that pause I heard a chair move. And I heard a woman's voice say something low and fast. 4 or 5 words. The exact length of a correction. Nathan said, the thing is, it's going to be tight, space-wise. They're taking the guest room, and Kendra's got this whole vision for the day. And honestly, Pop, they haven't seen her in a year and a half, and she just really wants it to be, like, her actual family. For once. I looked at the box of lights on the seat. Her actual family, I said. That came out wrong. Did it? Pop. He got a little edge in his voice, which is what he does when he is guilty, because guilt in Nathan converts directly into irritation with whoever caused it. Don't do the thing. Don't make it a whole thing. We're not saying never. We're saying not the 25th. Do New Year's. Do January. We'll do a whole dinner in January. January, I said. You're always around, that's the point. You're right here. They're in Florida. This is their one shot. I want to tell you that something exploded in my chest. It did not. What happened was quieter and, I think, worse. What happened was that the engineer woke up and started doing sums, and once he starts, he does not stop. I said, Nathan, let me ask you one thing and then I'll leave it alone. Whose house is it? He laughed. Not a mean laugh, a confused one. He honestly did not understand the question. That is the detail that still gets me at 2 a.m. It was not defiance, it was ignorance so total that the question did not even register as a question. It's mine, he said. Obviously, come on. What is that? Nothing, I said. Enjoy your Christmas. Tell Dale and Marcy I said welcome. Are you mad? You sound mad. I'm not mad, I said, and that was the truest thing I said all day. I'm just done being confused. I hung up. I sat there. The lights sat on the seat in their cardboard box, and I did the thing with the app and the 4 seconds and the little grey check mark. Then I drove to a diner on Route 9 and ordered a patty melt and a coffee, and I ate alone at the counter, And I want to be honest with you about how that felt, because if I tell you it felt good, I am lying and you will smell it. It felt like standing on a bridge you designed and hearing a sound you do not recognise. I called Gwen Marsh that night from my kitchen. Gwen is 71. She has been my attorney for 26 years, and she has the emotional range of a torque wrench, which is exactly what I needed. "Ray," she said, "it's 9 at night. I cancelled the Ridgeline transfer." She did not say anything for a moment. I could hear her turn a television down. "On purpose. On purpose." Then say the rest of it. "He told me I'm not family enough for Christmas dinner in a house I own outright in an entity he's never asked a single question about." Gwen let out a breath. "Ray, when I wrote that occupancy agreement, I told you that you'd either never use it, or you'd use it once and it would end the relationship. Do you remember what you said?" "I said fine. You said fine." She let that sit. "The mortgage draft on the 28th. It's an LLC obligation. If you don't fund the entity account, it goes into arrears, and it's the LLC's credit, not his. It doesn't touch him at all. He doesn't get a notice. He doesn't get anything. Legally, Ray, he is a guest who thinks he owns the building." And here is where I made the decision that everything else grew out of. I said, "Then don't tell him. Ray, don't tell him. Don't send anything, not one letter. That's not a strategy, that's a fuse." "Gwen," I said, "for 5 years I have solved every problem before he could feel the edge of it. I want him to feel one edge. One. And then we'll see who he is." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Fund the LLC to cover the note. Keep the mortgage current so we don't wreck the asset. Cancel everything else." I said, "Everything else." So on December 17th, in one afternoon at my kitchen table with a legal pad, I unbuilt it. The homeowner's insurance auto pay, cancelled. The HOA quarterly, cancelled. The lawn and landscape contract, cancelled with a phone call to a man named Victor who had been cutting that grass for 4 years and who said, "Everything okay, Mr. Coulter?" And I said, "It will be." The gutter service, the chimney sweep, which was scheduled for January 8th. The pest contract, the security monitoring subscription, which was $14 a month and which I had set up myself and which nobody in that house knew existed. The water heater service plan, the snow contract, which mattered a great deal, in about 11 days. And the last one on the pad, the one I sat with the longest, 4 years ago, when Nathan's Acura was making a noise, I had called my guy and put Nathan and Kendra on my umbrella auto policy, because it was cheaper as a bundle, and because I liked knowing they were covered, both their cars. It ran through my account. Nathan had never seen a bill. Kendra had told me at Thanksgiving 2 years back that insurance was such a scam, and I had smiled and cut my turkey. I cancelled it, effective January 1st, and I sent the required notice to the address on file, which was Ridgeline. That notice arrived in their mailbox on December 22nd, and it sat there, unopened, in a pile with the HOA letter and a coupon flyer, because nobody in that house opened mail. Mail was something that happened to other people. Christmas Day I drove up to the lake. I have a place there, if you can call it a place. Eleanor and I bought it in 1994, when it was a shack with a wasp problem. 2 bedrooms, a wood stove, a dock that I rebuilt myself in 2011, and that I'm still proud of. More proud than I am of a parking structure downtown that 1,100 cars sit on every day. Nathan thinks of it as the cabin, as in, you should really sell the cabin, Pop. He has never once asked what the lake is worth. It is worth about $800,000 because the lake got discovered by people with money about a decade ago, and I am one of 4 remaining owners on the North Shore who bought before that happened. Nathan has also never asked what I sold the firm for. That is not a small thing, so let me put a number on it. 3 years ago, I sold Coulter Structural to a national engineering group, $14,600,000, with $2 million of it in an earn-out that I collected in full last spring, because the firm outperformed without me, which stung and pleased me in roughly equal measure. After taxes and the buyout of my partner Denise, I sat on something north of 9. My son does not know that number. My daughter-in-law does not know that number. What Kendra knew was that I drive a 2009 F250 with a dent in the tailgate, that I wear the same brown canvas coat every winter, and that I once turned down a restaurant because it was $42 for a piece of fish. What Kendra knew was that I was a retired guy with a pension and a soft spot, and that the soft spot paid the mortgage, and that once the soft spot was properly managed, the mortgage would continue on its own out of habit. She had run the load path too. She had just run it wrong. I made a steak on Christmas Day. I drank 2 fingers of bourbon on the dock at 4 in the afternoon, while the light went pink and flat over the ice. And at 6, because I am a human being and not a machine, I opened Instagram. Kendra had posted 11 photographs. The dining table set with Eleanor's china. Not similar china. Eleanor's. Wedgwood. Ivory with a gold band. 42 pieces she assembled over 30 years. One place setting at a time, from a shop that closed in 2003. Kendra had asked for it 3 years ago. She had said, and I remember the exact phrasing, "It should be used, not stored." I had carried those boxes out to her car myself. Dale Whittaker sat at the head of the table. He was a big man gone soft, wearing a quarter zip, holding up a glass of red wine and laughing at something with his eyes closed. My chair. Not metaphorically, the actual chair, the one at the end nearest the window, where I had sat for 4 Thanksgivings and 3 Christmases, and 1 very quiet Easter. Nathan was in the background of frame 6, blurry, carrying a platter, wearing an apron, smiling that smile he does when he is being useful to someone he wants approval from. The caption said, "Finally a real Christmas with the people who show up. Blessed doesn't cover it." I read it maybe 9 times. The people who show up. I want to describe what happened in my chest, and the honest answer is that nothing did. Nothing hot. What I felt was a click, like a breaker throwing, like the moment in a load test when a member stops flexing and starts to fail. And there is a sound, and the sound is very small, and every engineer in the room goes quiet because they all know what it means. I put the phone face down on the dock. I finished the bourbon, and then I called Gwen Marsh on Christmas night, which I had never done in 26 years. She answered on the 2nd ring. Who died? Nobody. I need to know something. Dale and Marcy Whittaker. Sarasota. I want to know what they actually have. Ray, it's Christmas. Gwen, she sighed. Give me until the 2nd. The call came on January 1st at 9:40 in the morning. I was on the dock. Ice fog, no wind, 21 degrees. The Heron was on the far point pretending not to look at me. I had a thermos and I had my phone in my coat pocket on purpose because I had known for 2 weeks exactly what day this would be, and some cold part of me wanted to be outside when it landed. Dad. Not Pop. Dad. That is how I knew Kendra was standing next to him. Happy New Year, I said. What did you do? You'll have to be specific. The insurance. His voice went up half an octave. Kendra got rear-ended in the Whole Foods lot yesterday. Nothing crazy, it's a bumper. But the guy's insurance called and they're saying she's not covered. They're saying the policy terminated on the 31st, and I called our agent. And he said we were removed from a policy in December. Dad, we're driving uninsured. Do you understand what that means? That's a misdemeanor in this state. She was driving uninsured yesterday. I watched the Heron take 2 steps. That's right, I said. Silence. 4 full seconds of it. That's right. What does that mean, that's right? It means I cancelled it, I said. On the 17th. The notice went to your mailbox. It's probably still there under the HOA letter. Why would you? He started, and then his voice did something I had never heard it do. It cracked in the middle and came out the other side much smaller. Why would you do that without telling me? And I said the sentence I'd been carrying around in my coat pocket for 16 days. Nathan, I did tell you. I sent it to your address. If you want to be a man with his own house, you have to be a man who opens his own mail. He started talking fast then, and it all came out in a heap. This is the part where I learned everything. The HOA had sent a 2nd notice, and then a 3rd, and then a fine, and then a lien warning taped to the door on the 29th, which Dale had found and pulled off, and handed to Nathan with a comment about how his neighbourhood association in Sarasota would never have behaved that way. The lawn was not the issue in January, but the snow was, because we got 6 inches on the 27th, and nobody came, and Marcy Whittaker slipped on the front walk on the 28th, and did not break anything but talked about it as though she had. The insurance on the structure had lapsed on the 1st, which Nathan did not know yet, and which would matter enormously in about 9 days. And then, because he was panicking and had lost the ability to filter, He told me why he had no cash. I don't have anything liquid right now. That's the thing, Dad. That's the whole thing. The timing is just so bad. What did you buy? That's not fair. It's not like that. Nathan, what did you buy? A long breath. We took delivery on an Escalade on the 19th. I did not say anything. Kendra's Q5 was 6 years old, he said into my silence, and he kept going, the way people do. Her parents were flying in, and you know how Dale is. He was a dealership guy for 30 years, he notices, and she just wanted, look, 11 grand down, and then there's the kitchen. What kitchen? We put a deposit on the kitchen, the Reno. Kendra's been designing it for 2 years, Dad. It's her whole portfolio. She needs a real project to show, and the contractor had a January slot open up, and we had to hold it. 18,000. I closed my eyes. $29,000. In the 11 days between telling me I was not family and calling to ask why the family money stopped. $29,000 spent on the appearance of prosperity, deployed to impress a retired car salesman from Sarasota, laid on top of a foundation that was not his, in a house he did not own, financed by a man he had uninvited from Christmas dinner. Dad, are you there? I'm here. Look, I get it. I do. I get that Christmas was, I hear you, okay? It was clumsy. But this is not proportional. You cancelled the insurance over a dinner. Do you hear how that sounds? Kendra's saying you're trying to control us, and honestly, right now, from where I'm standing, I'm having a hard time arguing with her. The heron finally went. Big, slow, prehistoric, 3 wing beats and gone over the tree line. I said, Nathan, do you know what an occupancy agreement is? What? Never mind, I said. Go open your mail. I hung up and I turned the phone off, and I stayed on that dock until my fingers stopped working properly. And then I went inside and put a log in the stove and made eggs. Gwen called me on January 3rd with the Whitakers. Dale Whitaker ran a used car lot in Bradenton for 22 years, and then a boat dealership for 6. The boat dealership went under in a way that generated 4 separate lawsuits, one of which turned into a judgment against him personally for $218,000 in 2023. The Sarasota condo, which Kendra had described at my own dinner table as their place on the water, was sold in October at what appeared to be a fire sale price to a buyer who then flipped it in 6 weeks. Marcy had a wage garnishment against her from a furniture store. Their forwarding address, filed with the Postal Service on December 11th, 5 days before my son called me from a chair with a woman standing next to it, was 4415 Ridgeline Court. They had not come for Christmas. They had moved in. Gwen said it flat, the way she says everything. The moving company records show a partial load, 2,000 cubic feet. That's not luggage, Ray. That's a household. There's also a storage unit rented in Kendra's name on the 12th, climate-controlled 10 by 30. I sat with that, 5 days before the phone call. She knew. She knew on the 11th that her parents were coming permanently, and on the 16th, she stood next to my son and fed him the words, her actual family. And it was not an insult. It was logistics. There was no guest room. There was no guest room because there were no guests. There was a man with a judgment against him, and a woman with a garnishment moving into a 4-bedroom house owned by an LLC belonging to a widower they had decided was a soft touch. And the one thing that plan could not survive was me stopping by on a Saturday and noticing that Dale had a workbench in my garage. I was not uninvited from Christmas. I was evicted from my own house by people who did not know it was mine. And then Gwen said the last thing, and her voice changed slightly when she said it, which for Gwen is like another person weeping. Ray, one more. Kendra called my office on November 19th. She what? She didn't call me, she called the office. She asked the front desk what would be involved in moving a property into a family trust for estate planning purposes. She asked whether the owner needed to be present for the signing or whether a notary could come to the residence. Andrea took the message. She asked for you specifically, and when Andrea said you'd have to authorise it, she said she'd call back and never did. I said, estate planning. Ray, listen to me carefully because I am going to say this once, and then we're going to talk about it like adults. She wanted a quick claim in front of a notary at a kitchen table on a holiday from a 68-year-old widower who just had 2 bourbons. That is not estate planning. That is not even fraud yet. But it's the county road that leads to the county road that leads there. I looked out the window at the lake. Gwen, I said, Send the notice. Gwen Marsh sent a 30-day notice to vacate on January 4th by certified mail and by process server. She is thorough. The server was a very polite young man named Curtis, who put the envelope directly into Nathan's hands at 8:15 on a Thursday morning while my son stood in the doorway of a house he had told 40 people he owned, holding a coffee in a bathrobe. I did not see it. I have imagined it more times than I should admit. He called at 8:22. I answered. What is this? Read it, this. I'm reading it. It says Coulter Ridge Holdings. It says licensee. Dad, what is this? That's the entity that owns your house, I said. It has owned it since March of 2021. You signed a 2-page agreement in a coffee shop on Cordova Street. You borrowed a pen from the barista. It is revocable with 30 days' notice. That was day 1. You have 29 left. Silence. A very particular kind. The sound of a man rereading the same line. Then Kendra took the phone. I had never heard her raise her voice before that morning. Not once in 5 years. She had always operated at a very controlled volume, which I had mistaken for poise, and which I now understand was efficiency. Shouting costs energy. Kendra did not spend energy on things that did not pay. You lied to us for 4 years. I never said a word about it, I said. That's different from lying. You never asked. He signed something in a coffee shop, Ray. He was 29. He trusted you. He was 29 and he signed a legal instrument without reading it, I said, in front of a man he'd known his whole life, and the man he'd known his whole life protected him. That's what that document is, Kendra. That is a document that stopped you from putting my house into a trust in November. The silence on that one was the best silence of my life. I am not proud of enjoying it. I enjoyed it anyway. I don't know what you think you know, she said, and her voice had gone very careful, the way voices do when the speaker has just found the edge of the map. I know your father's judgment number, I said. I know what the condo went for. I know about the storage unit on the 12th and the moving company on the 11th. And I know that on the 16th you told my son to tell me that Christmas was for your actual family. And Kendra, here is the part I want you to actually hear, because I don't think you've heard anything in 5 years. I would have said yes. What? If Nathan had called me on the 11th and said, Pop, Kendra's folks are in trouble. They lost a condo. Can they stay a while? I would have said yes. I would have moved a bed. I would have brought a turkey. I have a lake house sitting empty, 11 months a year, that I would have handed Dale Whittaker the keys to, and I have never even met the man. My voice did something then that I did not authorize. You didn't have to lie to me. You had to lie to me because you didn't want help. You wanted the house. She hung up on me. That is the only thing she ever did that I respected. What happened over the next 3 weeks I mostly know from Nathan, who called constantly, and from a neighbour named Dolores Ibarra, who had my number because I had fixed her fence post in 2022, and who apparently considered that a lifetime contract. The internet went first because that was Nathan's bill, and Nathan had used that money for a kitchen deposit. Then the power, on the 14th for 4 hours, which Dolores said produced a sound from that house she had not heard in the 11 years she had lived on that street. The HOA lien went on the record on the 16th, and on the 9th a pipe in the upstairs guest bath, which is on an exterior wall, which I had told Nathan about twice and put on his phone calendar once, froze and split, because nobody had left a faucet dripping, because nobody in that house had ever had to think about a house. It let go on a Saturday morning. Ceiling came down in the dining room. Onto the table. Onto Eleanor's china. Kendra put that on the internet. The video is 11 minutes long, and it has, last I checked, about 2.2 million views. She is very good. I want to be clear that she is very good, because it makes the rest of it mean more. She sits on the floor of a wrecked dining room in a grey sweatshirt with no makeup, and she holds up a piece of broken china with a gold band on it, and she cries, and it is not fake crying. That is the thing people get wrong. It was real. She had really lost something. It just was not what she said it was. My father-in-law is worth millions, she says, at about the 4-minute mark. Millions. And he did this because we asked for one Christmas. One. He cancelled our home insurance in secret. He let the house fall apart around us to punish my husband for setting a boundary. My parents are in their 70s. They're sleeping in a house with no heat. He didn't just take a house. He took a family and he broke it because he couldn't be told no. The comments were exactly what you would expect. 31,000 of them. People wanted my address. Somebody found a Coulter structural press release from 2019 with my photograph in it. Me in a hard hat at a ribbon cutting. And that photo went around with the word monster across it in white block letters. A local news blog ran it. Millionaire engineer freezes son out after Christmas snub. My old firm, which does not employ me and has not for 3 years, got so many calls they had to put a statement on their website. Nathan called me on the 21st, not to defend me, to ask me to make it stop. Just pay the HOA thing and let us stay till spring and she'll take it down. That's the deal. That's all it is, Dad, she'll take it down. And there it was. Not an apology. An offer. My son, my only child, standing in a house with a hole in the ceiling, calling me to broker a hostage exchange on behalf of the person who had taken the hostage. Nathan, I said, do you know what she's asking me to buy? She's not asking. I'm asking. She's asking me to buy her opinion of me. And son, that's the one thing on earth I've already paid too much for. I did not do a live stream. I did not make a video. I am 68 years old and I have a face like a load-bearing wall, and I was not about to go on the internet and defend myself, because you cannot win an argument in a room where the loudest person owns the floor. What I did was simpler. I had Gwen send 4 things to the blog that ran the story, and I sent the same 4 things, in one email with no message body, to the family group chat that Kendra had created 3 Christmases ago and named Coulter Crew with a Santa hat emoji. 1. The deed. Coulter Ridge Holdings LLC. Recorded March 2021. 1 page, plain as a fence post. 2. The occupancy agreement, both pages, with Nathan's signature at the bottom in ballpoint. 3. A 1-page ledger prepared by my accountant of every dollar the LLC and I had paid into 4415 Ridgeline Court since March of 2021. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, HOA, lawn, gutters, chimney, pest, the water heater, the auto policy for both of their cars. 4 years and 10 months, $361,418. 4. The Postal Service change of address, filing for Dale and Marcy Whitaker, dated December 11th, showing a permanent forwarding address of 4415 Ridgeline Court, filed 5 days before my son called me to say there was no room, no caption, no argument. I have spent my whole life on the principle that the load path is the load path, and if you show people the load path, they will see it whether they want to or not. It took about 6 hours. The internet does not forgive being lied to. It does not care about right and wrong. It cares about being played. And the moment those 4 documents went up, 2.2 million people who had spent a week feeling righteous discovered they had been recruited. December 11th sat on that screen like a coroner's report. Kendra's video is still up. She turned the comments off on the 23rd. Marcy Whitaker left first, which surprised nobody who had met her. She flew back to Florida on the 24th and stayed with a cousin. Dale went 2 days later, and on his way out he had a conversation with Nathan in the driveway that Dolores heard most of, and the part she reported to me, which I have decided to believe because it is too specific to be invented, is that Dale said, "You should have handled your father." Not "I'm sorry," not "we shouldn't have." You should have handled your father. 5 years of my wine and my roof and my chair, and the exit line is a performance review. Kendra filed on the 6th of February. She did not fight for the house because Gwen had made sure there was no house to fight for, and she did not fight for much else because there was not much else. She took the Escalade, which is to say she took $11,000 of my son's money and $891 a month of his future, and she moved back to Sarasota. And she is currently, according to a website with a serif font, a lifestyle and interiors consultant serving the Gulf Coast. Nathan called me on a Tuesday in March. "I'm out," he said. "I'm out of the house. I left the keys under the mat. I didn't know what else to do with them." "Okay. There's a guy coming Thursday about the ceiling." "I know. I hired him." A long pause. "Right." I let it sit. "I'm at a place in Bellhaven," he said. "Studio. $650 a month. There's a laundromat under it, and the whole apartment smells like dryer sheets all the time." He laughed, a wrecked little sound. "I kind of like it, actually. That's insane, right?" "No," I said. "That's not insane." And then he said, "Dad, can I come out to the lake?" I stood in my kitchen, and looked at the ice going grey on the water. And I want you to understand that everything in my body said yes. That is the thing nobody tells you about this. The wanting does not go away. It is not extinguished by evidence. My son asked to come home and every cell I have said open the door. And I stood there and I understood, finally and completely, that the yes in my chest was the exact same yes that bought a house in 2021, and that it had never once been love. It had been fear wearing love's coat, fear of the silence, fear of a Christmas alone. I had been buying insurance against loneliness for 5 years, and the premium was my dignity, and the policy did not pay out. No, I said. He was quiet. Not now, I said. Nathan, listen to me, because I'm only going to be this honest with you one time. I did this to you, not the last 3 months, the 4 years before it. I held you up so long, you never grew the parts that hold you up. That's mine. I'll carry it. But if you come out here now, I'll fix your apartment, and then I'll fix your car, and then I'll fix your life, and in 6 years you'll be 40, and we'll do all of this again with a different woman, and I will be too old to survive it a second time. I could hear him breathing. So no, I said. Not now. Then when? And I said, ask me in a year. The house sold in June. $645,000 to a couple in their 30s with a toddler and a dog and a pre-approval letter they had gotten themselves. I watched the little girl run across that grass during the walkthrough, and I had to go stand by my truck for a minute. I did not keep the money. I put all of it, plus what it took to make the number round, into a trust at the community college for kids going into the trades. Welding, HVAC, electrical, structural drafting. It is called the Eleanor Coulter Fund, and it pays tuition and tools for 11 students a year. And every one of those kids will graduate owning something, which is more than I managed to give my own son with $361,000. Nathan does not work for the fund. He does not know anyone on the board. He applied for nothing, and I offered nothing. He is framing houses now. He quit the medical device job in May, which I did not tell him to do, and which I still do not entirely understand. And he took a job with a residential framing crew for $24 an hour. He is 34, and he is the oldest apprentice on that crew by 9 years, and the foreman is 26. Dolores sent me a photo she took from her car, because Dolores has decided she works for me now. He was up on a wall plate with a nail gun, shirt soaked through, laughing at something. His hands erect. I saw them in July when he drove out unannounced, and I let him stand in my driveway for 10 minutes, because I am not a saint. His hands looked like my father's hands. It was the first time in 34 years I looked at my son and saw a load path. He did not ask for money. He asked if the dock needed work. I said the dock was fine. He said, okay. He said the ceiling guy did a good job. He stood there, and then he said, 11 months, and got in his truck and left. And I went inside and sat down on the floor of my own kitchen for a while, which is a thing I had not done since Eleanor died. Ask me in a year, I told him. There are 11 months on it now. I don't know what I'll say. I honestly do not know. That is not a cliffhanger. That is just the truth, and I am too old to dress it up. But here is what I know for certain, and it is the only thing I have that might be worth something to you. The most expensive thing I ever bought was not a house. It was the feeling of being necessary. I paid $361,000 for it, and I would have paid $1 million more, because a man will pay anything to not sit alone on the 25th of December. And what I learned, sitting alone on the 25th of December, with a steak and a dock and a heron that wanted nothing from me, is that I was never lonely at that table. I was lonely for 4 years, while surrounded by people, which is a completely different disease. And money is the thing that hides the symptoms while it kills you. You cannot buy a seat at your own table. If you have to pay for it, it was never yours. It was a rental, and the rent goes up every year, and the day you cannot make the payment is the day you find out what you actually own. I own a dock I built. That is it. That is the whole portfolio that matters. If somebody in your life has confused your generosity for their entitlement, hit the like button and subscribe, because there are more of these coming, and every one of them ends the same way, not with revenge, with a receipt.